Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the first class of yoga philosophy. And we're about to start. And the way we're going to start today, and the way we're going to start every class, we're going to take a moment. And before we absorb all the information that we're about to absorb, we're going to take what I call a transition time, meaning we're going to sit down comfortably, hopefully with the back straight. We're going to close the eyes. And we're just gonna focus the attention on the breath. Inhale and exhale. Stay there with your breath. Take this moment to bring your mind into here, into this present moment. And let's keep breathing for a moment. Inhaling and exhaling. Follow your own breath. Inhale and exhale. Okay, we're gonna take a few more deep breaths. Hopefully that's allowed a transition moment from the busyness of life. We find a space to be here, right now, so we can absorb all the knowledge, yoga history, yoga philosophy. In this class, we're gonna go beyond the asana part of the practice, learn a little bit more about what yoga is really about. We're gonna do this from different points of view, traditional perspective of the philosophy aspect, and we're also gonna try to take it into modern time. What has yoga become for us? So as you take the last exhale, take your chin down and then slowly open your eyes. And now there's more people. Thank you for joining. I like that. Okay, let's learn a little bit. The subject today, which I thought that it would be a nice subject to start with, is what is yoga? You know, and this question came to me. I started practicing like about 2 decades ago, and I started doing a lot of asana. And at some point, and I would say years after, I started asking myself, what is yoga? What is this that we've been practicing? You know, why are people saying that this dates back 5,000 years ago? Who invented? Where does it come from? And why, like, where is the relationship between the moving in different directions, you know, bending and stretching? Where is the relationship? And if we connected to the spiritual aspect of the practice. Now, certainly, like when I practice asana, I do feel as my body relax, as I breathe deeply, I definitely feel a change into my psyche. But I wanted to learn a little bit more. So what we're doing now is we're trying to provide some information, and I'm hoping we can do that without being too boring. And we're going to try to provide what information of what is yoga. The thing is, we're talking about a philosophy that some people say it dates back 5,000 years ago. Some others said it dates back 6,000, other 3,000. We don't know. It started in India, and it started with the Vedas, and the Vedas are more normally orally information. And then we moved to the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita and other information. And so there's a lot to talk about. So what I'm gonna do right now, and I'm gonna share my screen, is we're actually gonna look into one angle of what yoga can be. So let me say 1 second. because technology, it's difficult for me. And I'm trying to share a screen. Here it goes. Okay. One moment. I hope everyone can see this. Now I'm up to full screen, and we're gonna begin. Okay. So, and this information, just so everyone knows, will be shared as a PDF in the course. So if you wanna go over it, and if you wanna print it, you can also use that. So, what is yoga? As I said, like first it comes from the Vedas, and the Vedas are actually the first Veda ever invented is the Rig Veda. We don't know exactly who did it. We don't know how it came about, but it was verbal information. One information passed to another person and so on, like creating a chain. And we're talking about information that at the beginning, supposedly, few people or one person, a sage, came and meditate on the caves and then find this information about how to reach freedom, mental freedom from all the suffering. And then from there, people kept passing that information. And we're talking about 1500 years at least of transforming that information. So it changes a lot from the first Veda to the last one. Then there's the Upanishads. And there's the Mahabharata, which is a very wide text that contains the Bhagavad Gita. And in there, it starts talking about yoga, but it never touches upon the asana practice or the modern concept that we know about yoga. It talks a lot about karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. Karma yoga meaning the yoga of service, meaning that we can reach this state of freedom by our actions, how we serve into the world. And Jnana Yoga, it's the yoga of knowledge, how we can actually find a state of freedom, mental freedom, and reduce the suffering that we live by actually learning and creating knowledge. And then finally, it talks about Bhakti Yoga, it's the yoga of devotion. So those are from the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita, supposedly, again, this is all, when we come to Indian philosophy and yoga philosophy, everything is an hypothesis. Like we don't know exactly where it comes from, but we believe it comes from Vyasa. That's one of like the ideas. Vyasa was a sage that created the Bhagavad Gita. But okay, so this is just to give you other aspects of what the yoga philosophy comes from. But the one that I'm going to emphasize this course, I know like I like to go over it a lot, it's going to be about the Yoga Sutras. So the Yoga Sutras are created supposedly by Patanjali. Patanjali supposedly is a sage. It's if you Google it right now, it's going to be funny because it seems like a very mythical character. He was born like an incarnation from a snake. And right there, you'll see that we have a photo. And that's a photo of Patanjali, see? And you can see he's half a person, or she's half a person, half a snake. Because supposedly it's an incarnation born from a yogini, Gonika. And he was incarnated from a snake. So that's the what you see. If you see statues like that, that's Patanjali. But the thing is, like another funny thing, if you look it up also, it's very mythical, but supposedly Patanjali was born on a certain place in India. I believe the name is Uttar Pradesh. And I believe it's the same place supposedly where Buddha lived or was born. So there's like the two aspects of this. And the idea was not that Patanjali created the Yoga Sutras. Patanjali, what he did supposedly, he was grab all the information from the Vedas, from the Gita, from the Upanishads and everything, and synthesize it and put it into verses. And that's where the Yoga Sutras came about. He was really good, supposedly, to synthesize a very deep information. But here's the thing. Still, there's other theories that Patanjali was actually few people. So the theory goes that maybe Patanjali created the first three chapters of the Yoga Sutras. Then later on, someone else created the last chapter because it's four chapters. There's the theory too that it was created by several people under the name of Patanjali. So at this point, we are not sure about like if it is completely true that it was created by Patanjali, but the good thing is that it's not the most important part of what of the Yoga Sutras, because the content is the part that is the most relevant. So the yoga, and also I would like to add the Patanjali, whether it was a group of people or it was a sage, whether it was a woman or a man, or whether it was a person who did certain part of work and then other people did other part of work. At the end, Patanjali not only created the Yoga Sutras, he created also, and you can see it here in the slide, the Mahavyasa. So the Yoga Sutras mainly touches upon the idea of reducing pain and suffering by looking at our minds, purifying our minds. Then there's a Bhajavyasa, which is the purification of the word, which is like, let's try to improve ourselves by looking at what we say to others and what we say to ourselves. And then finally, he's been said that also he created a lot of information that actually comes in the Chakara Samhita, which is the Ayurveda Bible, to put it in a way. It's not said that he actually did that text, but actually that he was a big part helping and contributing. Okay, so why I think that, and this is what I like, I think Patanjali was, whether it was a group of people or whoever it was, like the idea was like, let's work on the mind, let's work on the body, and let's work in what we say and how we act into this world. And by, like actually improving the way we act, the way we talk, the way we think, and the way we use our bodies. By doing that, we're gonna create an improvement in our suffering, and we're gonna find that state of liberation, contentment, and many other. So that's when actually, like when I started hearing, when I started studying the Yoga Sutras, I love it because of that. Because I, up until that point, for me, yoga was mostly about the asana practice. And then I started understanding that this philosophy was trying to purify every aspect of our being. And actually, the asana was one way to purify our minds, because there's a connection, that under the belief that there's a connection. Okay. So, having said that, and I hope it's clear, we move into the Yoga Sutras. Okay. Now we have some background, and we know that at the end, all this yoga philosophy coming from India, maybe 5,000 years ago, it was synthesized in the Yoga Sutras, and maybe many other texts. There's the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. There's so many, you know. But as I said, I'm giving one angle. So the Yoga Sutras, and this is, I feel, the more simple angle, because if you've been to India, it's a complex society with complex everything. And to understand the yoga philosophy, I think it's important just to go on one road and stay there until you get it. And it might take decades, and then you move to the next information. Okay, so what are the Yoga Sutras? Yoga Sutras, if there's many adaptations of Yoga Sutras, but if you have read them, if you have been a yoga student, if you have done a teacher training, you've noticed that those are verses compiling to 4 padas, which are chapters, each one explaining different things. The first part is about what is yoga, how can there's suffering, how we can release that suffering, and then finally, like, it's all about samadhi. Okay, now I want to say one important thing about these Yoga Sutras. At the end, for me, in a personal perspective, the purpose of the Yoga Sutras is not necessarily samadhi. Samadhi is like supposedly different altered state of consciousness. um, and actually for me it goes beyond that. The intention of finding these states of meditating states was actually to reach what we call in yoga moksha, liberation, freedom. I like it that, like before I started learning the yogas, and because of the patterns of the mind I have built into myself, I used to blame everyone and everything for my own suffering. This person did this to me. This situation happened to me, and then I have to suffer. There's no other way. Whatever happened to me, I have to suffer. Um, in the Yoga Sutras, the first thing we found is the kleshas. And kleshas are different types of causes of pain. Actually, kleshas come from the kles, meaning pain. So at the end, what the kleshas are saying is that we are suffering. And in most cases, we suffer because not having the right knowledge of who we are into this planet and what is life about. So we suffer. We suffer because my friend did this to me. We suffer because I had a bad day. We suffer because things are not working the way they're supposed to work, because things are hard, because I lost this, I lose that. So, not to say that, of course, like pain is part of life. I liked it when I heard once that pain is inedible. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing it well. This is a hard word. but um, but suffering sometimes is optional. Sometimes we're suffering more than we want to, because we're programmed also, like ever since we're kids, without maybe even like our people around us saying it, we start looking at this person, like my mom, my dad, they are suffering because of this. So if they suffer because of lack of money, then I should be suffering too, like when that happens to me. So we learn, there's part of like learning of suffering, like the reasons why we should suffer. We start being programmed, and we start learning, okay, if this happens to you in life, you should cry and you should feel bad and you should have pain. So the idea is that sometimes we ended up suffering more than necessary. Obviously some things are obviously like you can't avoid feeling pain, but some things are sometimes optional. And it is funny because the other day I was listening to this podcast. The podcast was about physical pain, and it's from uh, Andrew Huberman, I believe, and he does a lot of studies under neuroplasticity. And he was learning that, actually he was talking about how actually like kids feel less pain physically, because like the sensation of pain, it physically is less than an adult, because we are learning, we have been so programmed by now. When we're adults, are so programmed, this should hurt me, this should like I should cry about this, I should do this or that. And he gave an example. It was an interesting example of actually as a real case, where there was this constructor, and he fell over in the construction, and he had a big nail coming and crossing through his foot. And he described his pain as unbearable, that it was the most excruciating pain as he has ever felt. He was taken to the hospital, and when he got there, they noticed that the nail, although it was big, never touched the skin. It perforated the shoe, but it never touched his skin. His foot was completely fine. So what I'm talking about this because the idea what happened to him and caused like an imaginable source of pain immediately. And sometimes when I was hearing that tell, I thought, well, maybe that's what we do also in the emotional life, in the mental life. I didn't get the job that I wanted. I lost this, I lost that, and we create pain that is not necessary. And in a way, that's what in the Yoga Sutras are saying. We're creating unnecessary pain, and sometimes it's because of the lack of knowledge, or sometimes it's because the patterns that have been put into our mind. So, um, having said that, then Patanjali suggests, hey, here's the thing, we can do something about it. There's ways to liberate. It's going to take time probably, but we can do something about it. I like that. In the other course that if you can find it on the membership, it's about the 8 limbs of yoga. So this time I decided to put it in a different words, maybe similar information, but different way to put it. And a way to actually connect all this with the asana practice. So the Kriya Yoga a concept gets introduced here. And basically, the Kriya Yoga, Kriya means cleaning, like purifying. That there's ways we can clear the mirror, the dirty mirror of the mind. One of them, and you can find this also in the 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, it's tapas. First of all, let's say, let's work in, as in said, like not only in the mind, but let's work in the body, purify the body. Because according to the yoga, there's a deep connection between what we do in the body affects the mind, what we do in the mind affects the body. And I always feel that that connection is so obvious. When we get scared, the physical, or when we get stressed, or when we get extremely upset, the physical reaction, it's immediate. The heart rate, the pressure, the blood pressure, the sweatiness, the everything, like we get an immediate reaction. And sometimes for other reasons in life, something happens and we might not get an immediate reaction. So we don't see the link, but sometimes it may be all the memories of what we are experiencing constantly have some impression in our bodies. So the tapas is the concept that we want to start purifying the mind, the body, meaning the here exercise, asana practice, breathing, nurturing the body, sometimes fasting, sometimes eating well, sometimes like eating better, like keeping the body clean. And I always think about it is like if you were to go to a place, like you want to go to a temple to find peace, to find calmness. You get to that temple and it's a mess, it's dirty, it's noisy, it's uh, overly stimulated. You're not going to find any peace. How can you find peace? So that's the same way that the body, I think in yoga, we can consider it as a temple. Okay, we want to find peace of mind. Let's clean that temple. Let's keep it clean and nice. So the mind can reside and really do the job. Okay. So then it comes something very important that I always say, if we want to practice yoga off the mat, this is a great opportunity. Yogananda used to say that at the end, yoga is self-realization. Notice who we really are, behind our names, behind the ego, behind all the labels we put in ourselves. And this concept is very important for self-realization. It's called esvadhyaya, and it's self-observance, self-study. In a way, first of all, it means that. And it means like, sometimes, and that happens to me a lot, sometimes we do a beautiful 2 hours and a half practice of yoga. We do it the right way. We wake up at 4 a.m., Brahma Muhurta time. We're already like super yogis. We do meditation. We do a long, extended, super nice asana practice. We do pranayama. And we feel great. But then the rest of the day, um, we actually are not observing how we're treating others. We act selfishly without noticing. We create some unnecessary stress. We keep overcharging our senses. We lose the balance in life and everything. Um, so it kind of like doesn't make sense because we're taking time to really purify the body, but then we just make a party and ruin the whole thing. So what do we want to do with this Vadaya is observing the rest of the day. Observe how we act. what we say. Why are we saying why are we saying things, and what is the way we're thinking? What is the way we are acting into this world? And for me, I have found that is one of the best ways to actually practice yoga. Um, I would say sometimes that maybe the most important way to start is by how we um, interact with the world and observing the thoughts, and many times the thoughts there's a whole dialogue constantly happening to our mind. So when we observe it, I think we start being more kind. If we want to, we start being more kind, first with us and then with the others. I'll get more deeply into that, because also espadilla means like learning and studying the information. And everything that comes that we observe, everything, not, it's just like the food, when you eat, the food has an impact in you, a negative or positive depending on what you eat and what you can digest. But so yes, when same thing happens with everything we're absorbing from the world, what we watch, what we read, the conversations we have with other people. Sometimes uh, a conversation can be so uplifted that almost you feel enlightened, you feel good, you feel great, you feel that you gain something spiritual out of it. And sometimes, and this is an advice from the Espadilla point of view, losing time in conversations or arguments that can be depleted actually are not helping us in the yoga path. Like you lose energy, you lose prana. And so it's really important, like just like the same as nourishing our body with healthy food, we can nourish our senses, our mind, our whole spirit with different positive things. So that's something to look at when we are practicing Kriya Yoga. And again, that's a type of Kriya Yoga. Then finally, I really like this one. And in the area that we are in, actually, it gives a really nice opportunity to practice Isvara Pranidhana, which is pretty much the tranquilization of the mind. More than just preparing the mind, it's finding the space of harmony. One thing that is really hard in life, especially in the society we live in, is to find balance. We overwork or overeat or don't eat enough or over exercise. We party too much, we don't sleep enough, we sleep too much. Like sometimes, like finding that balance, that middle path, is the best thing we can do for our yoga practice. And but sometimes we get so caught up into the doing, into the busyness, into the stress, into the accomplish everything of the big agenda we have done, that we forget to take a moment to honor the sacredness of life. We forget that the life is bigger than our agendas. Life is bigger than our to-do list. The life is way more than that. That yes, we've been given a body and we live in a society and we're human being, and as being part of the society, there's things that need to be done, and that is important too. But it's good to honor that sacredness of life. And we're gonna move into the next slide. This photo was taken a few days ago. And right now in here, we're in summer, a beautiful summer. And every afternoon is very sacred. And as much as I can take, as much as I take time to go to the beach during sunset, because it's my reminder that life is way more than just the busy life. The life is way more than just me. We're just this big part, like part of this big thing. We're just another wave in the ocean. I have given this example so many times that I don't know if I should give it again, but it's just like, it feels so accurate. But if we think of the ocean, and of course it's hard not to give examples when we have the ocean right in front of us, right next to us, and it teaches so much about life. It's a great teacher, I think, for all of us here. And one other thing is, you always talk about the wave, the next wave, and everything. But the wave is actually the ocean. It's the movement of the ocean, and it goes back and forth, and it's all the same. It's all connected. We created that separateness, but each wave, especially when we're trying to surf. I'm saying some trying to surf because in my case, it's trying to surf. In some other people, it's surfing actually. But you feel that you're gonna catch the next wave. You're gonna flow with the ocean. You're connecting with the ocean. um so what I'm saying is that it's really important in the yoga practice, as part of the kriya practice, to always find time to honor that sacredness in life. And yes, for some of us might mean taking time because we're next to it, to be in the ocean, to appreciate a sunset. But for some others, it might be, yeah, taking a walk around the woods. For some other might be taking, a time to meditate, a time just to be in silence. But it's one aspect of how we can purify the mind, how we can purify the body, how we can find that sense of contentment, of freedom. And here's the thing. Normally, we think about the practice of yoga, and I think I made this mistake when I was young in the practice. I'm practicing yoga, so I reached the point where will have more freedom, where I will feel better, where I will find contentment. No, it's not a straight road that has an end to the rainbow, and it's not that we get there. It's actually a constant work that we're doing once and again to remind ourselves that life is bigger than just like the personal issues we have. Life is all connected, and we're part of this big web. And that connection, that consciousness actually creates a sense of freedom, moksha. And there's different ways we can go about it. But the important thing is, yeah, to always like keep working on it, and I give it an example, like when you are, I was a runner. Well, I like to still, I like to run, but sometimes we will enjoy races. I was never like really running just for races, but um, I did a few. But you don't end up just like you don't finish. You don't do a race and say, "I'm done. I'm not gonna run anymore." It's something you constantly do, or some other type of exercise you constantly do because it's good for you. And the idea of the Kriya Yogas are practices that we constantly do because we know that in the present moment, they do something good for us. So having said that, as usual, I'm going to leave some homework. Okay. Always optional homework, but we're going to start with the one that I consider the most important, Ishvara Pranidhana. And let's take a reflection of what is it that we do during the day to remember, first of all, that life is sacred. The life is way bigger than us. And second of all, that we're all connected. Everything that has there is a life is connected. We're part of this big thing. So maybe for you might be taking a walk, maybe taking 5 minutes of meditation, maybe sit down and breathe. Maybe enjoy a sunset, enjoy your cup of tea with your family, with the people you loved. But let's take really a moment every day, hopefully 7 days a week, it doesn't matter, to really remember the life is more than our busyness. The life is more than just like the to-do list. Then about Esvadhyaya, maybe we take a practice this week or all this time until we see each other on the next episode. And we observe the way what we're thinking. And we start questioning, why am I thinking this? Is this creating good in my life or the life of others or not? If the answer is yes, it's creating good in my life, then we embrace it and we go for it. If it is no, we release it, we let it go. So the idea of the practice is to observe the thoughts. When we feel angry, we look into the thought that is causing the emotion and we say, why am I really angry of this? Like, why am I angry because this person said this to me? is the root, because it's never about the others. It's always like, if we are feeling upset, it might be about us. What pain is it touching that it makes me feel angry? So this, it's a little bit of self-observance, and I'm sharing it because I have found that it has done greatness, a great on my life, to observe the times that I feel sad, the times that I feel angry, the times that I feel excluded, the times that I have feel any kind of feeling. Like, it's always go back, interesting to go back to the root of pain. And when you go and you dig deep and you go back to the root, you understand that it's never about the other person, it's always about you, and that you can do something about it. And then finally, tapas. Let's try to find maybe practices to purify the body. It could be asana practice, or in pranayama, that is the most traditional. But it can be, I commit to take a walk every day, 5-10 minutes. I commit to a stretch every day, a few hours, or 3 times a week. Something that cleans the body. Or I commit to maybe eat a little bit better, find a food that does better to me without getting obsessed by it, you know? Um, so yes, this is where we close this episode with Kriya Yoga. Uh, we will keep going deeper into that, but this is where I was gonna say, this is the connection between the asana practice, the postures, and the purification of the mind to find liberation. Basically, is this. Basically, is that we start by cleaning up the body. We start by paying attention to the body, by releasing the tension. I like that one teacher once said, like, the body has all the memories of what our past experiences. So some of them are good, some of them are not so good. So we need to liberate them, let them go from the mind, from the body, and everything. And this is part of the asana it's about. Later on, hopefully we talk about the asana in terms of moving the energy, as instead of just moving the body. Okay. But um, this is where I say goodbye. And I think that you didn't get to see much of me. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Before we close this class, I want to sit down and again go back into this little moment of transition time. So we're going to sit with the back straight. We're going to close the eyes. And we're going to take a little bit of Kriya Yoga. So we're going to come back to the breath. Deep inhaling. Deep exhaling. Consciously breathing right here, right now. Deep inhaling. Deep exhaling. Continue there a few more breaths. And let's know, let's be aware that every breath we take, it's a miracle. It's an opportunity. The fact that we are able to breathe deeply, the fact that we're able to move, the fact that we're able to think, talk, everything, it's a blessing. And it makes every moment a miracle. Doesn't matter how ordinary it looks. Once we realize that, we realize that there are no ordinary moments. So we change, the life can continue being the same, but we change the angle. From then on, we look at life as a miracle. Let's join the hands together right in front of the chest. Namaste, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Hope to see you next time.
Can you still not hear us? Yes, no?